reliable way to make people believe in falsehoods is frequent repetition, because familiarity is not easily distinguished from truth. Authoritarian institutions and marketers have always known this fact, but it was psychologists who discovered that you do not have to repeat the entire statement of a fact or idea to make it appear true. And that is Daniel Kahneman, the father of behavioral economics, illustrating how economic choices are swayed by repeated exposure to ideas, not rational analysis.
That actually reminds me of another quote by an authoritarian dictator, which is, tell a lie, make it big, keep telling it, and eventually people will believe it.
That is a common pattern in life, isn't it?
Shocker.
With that joyful intro, welcome to the House Einstein podcast. This is House Einstein podcast number 76. My name is Osman Parvez. I am your host here on the House Einstein podcast, and with me is Hamish Crab.
Hello. I'm also co-host and assistant to the brokerage, which is sponsoring this podcast.
That's right. The House Einstein brokerage is a separate and distinct entity from the podcast, but without the brokerage and all of our dealings in real estate, we certainly wouldn't have so many stories to share with you about real estate. And our goal in this podcast, according to the attorneys who advise us, is to entertain you. And you should not be making any significant real estate decisions or any decisions otherwise, frankly, on the basis of what you hear in this podcast. Purely entertainment. We hope you enjoy it. However, we will be talking about real estate matters, and hopefully that's educational for you. But if you're thinking about buying or selling real estate, please consult with your real estate advisor. If you don't have one and you are buying or selling here in Colorado, well, reach out to us. We likely can help you. And if we aren't serving your local market currently, we certainly can find you someone who we have confidence can serve you well. And I think that's enough of a background of what we are doing, what this podcast is about. But let's walk you through our topics today so you have a sense of what to expect. And the core topic for this podcast, that's a segment we call the closing table in this podcast. That core topic is a first quarter market review. So some of you may know that my background prior to jumping into the real estate world was financial analysis. I would say it still is financial analysis for investment companies. And today we provide those same services to our buyers and sellers. We make decisions, we encourage our clients to make decisions based on facts, not on emotions. And we also do our best to guide them through some of the pitfalls of buying and selling, because real estate is a very emotional experience. If you're a participant in the market, but you can't get away from the data. And in the long run, Mr. Market wins. So we'll be covering Denver and Boulder, and we'll also do a bit of a price range analysis so that you have a sense of really what's happening in the current market. And I'm almost jumping into it, but we'll save all those juicy details for the actual segment. The next segment will be shameless self-promotion. That's a brief little tour of a couple of deals, listings, or buyers that we're working with that perhaps you might be a good match for. So if you are, we would encourage you to reach out to us, or if you're working with an agent, have them reach out to us. That's our little shameless self-promotion segment. And then the next segment is called Sales of the Week, and those are lessons from recent closings that we think illustrate certain price points and neighborhoods, deal negotiations. Now that it's closed, we can share our thoughts on those properties. When they're active listings, the only place we can talk about it is our Fresh Listings newsletter, which we have now decided to bring out on a quarterly basis. It's just not possible to do that on a monthly basis when we are this active with buyers and sellers. But this little tour of listings that close, deals that close, will give you a good sense of how we think about and work in real estate, as well as educate you on what's going on in the market. And then our last segment, our second to last segment, is where we give you a little tour of the news of what's happening, particularly in our local community, how it might relate to real estate or not. hot takes, but also some detailed thoughts on happenings here on the Front Range primarily. And then we'll wrap it up with a little bit of Carveout. And Carveout topics are typically not real estate related, although they might be. And they just
looks
happen
like
to be,
both of these might be. Yeah.
both of these are top of mind kind of things that Hamish and I are delving into and have some thoughts and feelings to share on those topics. I think people like the Carveouts. I think it's a great little feature from the Acquired podcast. It's totally stolen.
Yeah.
It's a totally stolen idea from the Acquired podcast.
You think we're original? Yeah.
We are original. Nobody else I know is doing this level of detailed podcasting for Boulder real estate. Like it's hyper local. This is not a national real estate podcast, although maybe the topics might relate nationally, but it's really, we're trying to drill down into our local market. Yeah.
Oh, I had something to say, but if you are a follower of either Osman or House Einstein Instagram, you've probably already seen the charts that we're going to cover, but this is going to be in so much more depth. And I think Osman, it's probably worth cutting out and posting on Instagram on its own as well.
I mean, possibly. So herein is the challenge. The information you get from Zillow or most online sources for market analytics are far too general to be useful. And they are often so delayed that they're no longer actionable on top of that. They're not segmented by price range or neighborhood, or even cities. And the smaller the city, the less likely there is adequate research coverage. And that's how I think about it, because that's how I cut my chops in the professional world was research coverage on publicly traded equities. And so a company like GE or Apple will have dozens of professional analysts that are covering it and publishing research. And a community like Denver, when you add up the market value of all these homes, has almost no professional coverage. There's a couple of agents with MBAs like me who have some experience with analytics, who do provide occasional sound bites and quotes for the newspaper and put out their own research reports if you can find them. But that's few and far between. And so the opportunity has always been for House Einstein, and prior to that, my brokerage before that, actually two brokerages before that, was to provide far better analytics and actionable information for people to then use in their buying and selling decisions. So without further ado, we're going to get into it. This is actually the first time I think will go into this level of depth on the podcast. And it's a little bit challenging because you may not have the full visuals. And there's so much to talk about because there's so many different markets that I pay attention to. Denver, Longmont, Fort Collins, of course, Boulder, our home base. And then there's attached dwellings and detached dwellings, and there's segmentation by price range. And one thing I've learned over many years is that monthly data is far too volatile. Like I used to put this out monthly. If you go far enough back on my blog, the House Einstein website, you could find some of these old things. We used to put this out monthly because it was, I had more time and I thought that was really useful. And today the conclusion is quarterly is plenty. But if you are a client, if you are a buyer or seller,
more granular, right?
Pick up the phone, call us. Yeah. You are the priority. In fact, we delayed this podcast because we had an offer show up 2 minutes before launch time. And the offer has got to get priority to recording a podcast. Clients always come first, and that means down to the neighborhood level analysis when it's useful. Like if you're thinking about writing an offer, now's the time to really look closely at the alternatives that you could have written offers on. You can look closely at how deals of a similar price range location sold recently, like what sort of negotiated discounts were achieved, how long were those homes on the market. And I'm probably the only realtor who's done regressions for my clients who really wanted to look at the difference between Louisville and Boulder real estate over a 20-year time span for particular 3-bedroom, 2-bath houses of a certain square footage size. What does that look like as a, what does a trend line look like? And, happily put that together for a certain ER doctor client of mine who wanted to see the data. So anyway, let's get into it because already the
the preamble
the preamble is taking too long. So, this podcast is sponsored by House Einstein. We serve buyers and sellers in Colorado, focusing on Boulder, Denver, and several mountain resort towns, including Breckenridge and Winter Park. Our mission is simple: help you make a smarter real estate decision. You can learn more at houseeinstein.com or our YouTube channel, where you'll find videos on neighborhoods, specific listings, and much, much more. So the big picture. Let's start with the big picture.
Yeah, high level.
Having reviewed all this data, and I'll be honest, I'm trying to get my head around it because there's so much interesting things that have happened in the first quarter. So let's start with new listings, and let's look at single-family detached houses only, no attached condos and townhomes, for the full quarter. That's January, February, and March. And in Denver, there were 22% more new listings than last year. In Boulder, and that's Boulder County, 18.3% more new listings this first quarter than last year. The city of Boulder had 26% more listings. And then Longmont and Fort Collins were not quite as, the pace of new listings were not quite as strong as Denver and Boulder. Longmont saw 8.4% more new listings, and Fort Collins saw 14.5% more new listings. So across the board, in the footprint we focus our attention on, we saw significantly more new listings hit the market than last year. And when you look at the inventory levels, so new listings are adding to unsold or active inventory, we're seeing substantial elevation in inventory across the whole quarter. So these charts will show you the pattern of inventory over the last 12 months, but I just want to focus on quarter over quarter. So it's important to look at quarter over quarter, but it's also important to look at the trend line of how inventory has built up and where we are today. But inventory across the first quarter was 50% higher than last year in Denver, 37% higher than last year in Boulder County, 26% higher than last year in the city of Boulder, and Longmont is our weakest market. If you think about supply side dynamics, 53% more inventory than last year, which is astounding, and Fort Collins saw 18.6% more inventory. Well, what about sold?
I got confused. I'm looking at new. I've got the chart up over here, and I was reading 8.4% for Longmont, but I'm one row high.
Oh, yeah. You got to pay. You got to be careful.
Yeah.
So let's talk about sales. Like, what about what sold throughout the quarter? How did these markets compare to last year? And and Denver saw slightly more sales than last year in the first quarter, 2.8%. Boulder County saw a decrease in sales volume of 7%. City of Boulder saw a decrease in volume of 18.5%. You just round up and call it 19%. Mm-hmm. Longmont saw a slight increase in sales volume, 1.9% above last year, and Fort Collins saw 6.5% more sales than last year. So quarterly, sales were down in Boulder compared to last year, and I would say slightly up in Denver, excuse me, in Denver, Longmont, and slightly more significantly, 6.5% in Fort Collins. So what we've seen so far, which is mostly past looking, right? We're looking into the past of what happened in the first quarter, is a market that is dramatically softer with more supply and slightly more sales activity, but not keeping pace with the increase in supply. So you could say sales activity is a proxy for demand, and and overall inventory, both new listings adding to inventory, and the overall picture of active inventory points to much more supply. So basic economics, when you see more supply and less demand, prices should move down. But here's where things are a little surprising. And so it's very interesting to look at price in local real estate markets. I'm a fan of median dollar per total square foot, because with larger size markets, I feel like it's more of an accurate representation of the market as a whole. In certain price ranges and locations, you could see dramatic upswings or downswings based on local supply and demand factors. But when you look at the markets as a whole, total dollar per square foot expressed as a median sale price feels like the most accurate to me. I'm feeling you, the economic analysis, Hamish. But prices were actually up. Here's the drum roll and then the punchline. Prices were up in Boulder County, 3.6%. In the city of Boulder, up 3%. In Longmont, up 3.7%. And in Fort Collins, up 1.9%. Our only loser or decrease in median sale price was Denver, which saw a 1.7% decrease. Okay, so now you've seen prices. I think this is a momentum thing. It also, you could also argue maybe it's indicative of where the median fell within the data set. Like, is it really indicative of prices truly moving up or down? Anecdotally, I would have told you that we saw prices slide really hard last year between early spring and the fall. And the data is not, like, if I told you anecdotally based on our business and our clients, that's what we saw. Like, it's surprising. I've had several clients say to me, wow, I'm surprised it's priced so low. A couple of times this spring, like, me too. My brain is thinking this is a $200,000 or $300,000 more expensive house, but here we are. I think some of this might be what we're seeing more of in March than January and February. There's that factor to think about, but the data is the data. So that's the median of what's happened. And now let's hit the crystal ball for the future. And this was kind of surprising, but I double checked this to make sure it was right. We are seeing an increase in pending sales compared to last year across the board. So Denver, this is March pending sales. Right. This is this is almost a month ago, and we can check this, by the way. So yeah, let me back up. March pending sales. If you are actively buying or selling right now, we would be looking at what's happening right now, and we're gonna get to that by price range before the end of this.
We're building the history. Yep.
We're building the backstory.
The context.
So
yeah.
March pending sales saw 8.1% more for Denver, 11.9% more for Boulder County. 16.7% more than last year for the city of Boulder. So that's the highest so far increase in pending sales. Longmont, a slight increase of 3.7%. And then Fort Collins is the big change. 30% more pending sales in Fort Collins than a year ago for the month of March.
FOCO is moving on this chart, right?
Well, the narrative for why are we seeing these types of activity, rates did drop a little bit. And after several years of the market skidding sideways and down, the household formation typically doesn't stop because real estate prices are high. And we've seen some inflation. We've also seen people's wages rise. And at some point, there may be some people that are timing the market and deciding that 3 years is probably the longest downturn we're going to have. We finally see selection that we don't have to get into a bidding war to buy, and we need to buy. We've got family needs, job needs. Like, we had a client this spring who we spent quite a bit of time with who decided to hit the pause button after writing multiple offers and actually putting a house under contract. And interestingly enough, that house they put under contract in a bidding war is now $300,000 below where we had it under contract.
Oh, yeah.
That's shocking.
Dang.
Right? And I don't have a crystal ball. I didn't see that coming. It didn't feel dramatically overpriced at the time we wrote that offer, but clearly no one's jumping on it. I think the seller's also making a mistake by pricing it that low between us little podcast listeners.
It could be a factor.
I can't mention the address because it's active, but what a fantastic house in a great location in South Boulder. You know the one I'm talking about.
At this rate.
So,
yeah.
So anyway, so that's the quarterly market statistics as well as what happened in March. And now let's delve into, by price range, what's happening right now. And this is not looking at neighborhoods or property layouts or bedrooms or baths. It's just looking at single family detached houses in Boulder County and Denver. And we broke it out into 5 different price tranches. And that's 500 to $1 million, 1 to $2 million, which is really 1 to 1,999,999 for the record. So you data nerds are like, wait, how did you break out these tranches? We did it to the nines. So 500 to a million to 2 million, 2 million to 3 million, 3 million to 5 million. So we grouped 2 million together as we moved up in price. And then for funsies, this new ultra luxury category that has emerged primarily in Boulder, we did 10 million plus. We're skipping the 5 to 10 million price range. If you are somebody shopping in these price ranges, you should be doing this analysis to think about your level of competition. And so this is something that Daniel Kahneman would have said is called loss aversion, right? We see this over and over again with our buyers, that they fear that they're not going to see another house that's as good. And because they couldn't get it in a bidding war, they want it more. Like sometimes they become their own worst enemy. If there's another offer coming in, that fear of loss suddenly drives them to capitulate on everything we talked about in the negotiation. And now their negotiation stance is just don't lose it. We love this house. And because somebody else loves this house, we want it more. Hamish, I remember this from the dating world. I'm no longer single, so I'm not out there dating, but you are. And I got to tell you that when you are dating somebody, suddenly all these other ladies are interested. But if you are single, that was not happening. It was so interesting to see how people want what they can't have.
Yeah, and it's you don't even change anything about the way you're acting, but suddenly it's like a light switch, right? Insane.
Right. Suddenly it's social proof of your desirability. It's loss aversion, that if they don't
and
move
where
fast.
was that when I was single? Yep.
So loss aversion doesn't really apply to the dating world, I don't think. Yeah. But it definitely applies to real estate shopping. And we do our best to try to warn our clients that I will tell you if the other side calls me and says, look, we're getting another offer. But the net effect to you is you're going to want it more. And sometimes those listing agents are very clever and savvy, and there may not actually be another offer. But most of the time, based on experience, there is one. Most agents are not that cunning, I would say.
Yeah, cunning's definitely the word for it.
Some of them are, right? But not most of them. All right, so with that said, and it really shouldn't affect, so here's the thing. It shouldn't affect your decision on what the home's worth, the contingencies you will not give up, and other deal points based on somebody else's desire for this asset. You should know those things before you go into it. And if you're disciplined, stick to them. But one of the things you need to know is how many alternative options are you going to have. And so we often look at the last 12 months of sales or the last 6 months of sales, depending on time of year, to guide our client to how many more homes like this are you likely going to see. And that's very neighborhood and price range specific. But for right now, we're only going to talk about price ranges in Boulder County and Denver. And I'm going to rip through this pretty quick because we don't want this to be a 3-hour podcast. But hopefully you're still following along. So in that first price category, 500 to a million, there are currently over 450 houses in Boulder County available, 473 to be precise, and that is based on the recording date of this podcast, April 23rd, 2025, I will add. And of those 473 houses in Boulder, 171 are under contract. So that's 36% of the available houses are under contract. In Denver, that same price range, 500 to a million, 31% of available inventory is under contract, but the amount of inventory is radically different. So there's over 1,055 houses in Denver that you could buy for 500 to a million. These are detached single-family houses, 327 under contract, so 31%. So in Denver, the market is not absorbing the new inventory, the total inventory, as aggressively as in Boulder, but 36 to 31% is it's material, but
dang close. Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about a pretty good sample size, right? 473 for Boulder and 1,055 for Denver. So that's pretty significant. So 5% spread in the absorption rate, if you will. It's not really absorption rate, but close enough. Homes under contract. All right, so now let's look at the next price category. 1 million to 2 million. There are 388 houses available to buy in Boulder. 109 of them are under contract, so 28% is under contract. In Denver, 363 homes available. 104 of those are under contract, 29%. And when I said available, I really mean total inventory. So you're looking at 28 or 29% of homes in the $1 million to $2 million range are under contract. So basically the same exact number for Boulder or Denver. Now you jump into the next price category, $2 million to $3 million. In that price category, there are 122 homes on the market in Boulder. Only 16% are under contract. So let me say that a little different way. 122 houses, 84% are available without a buyer right now. 84 minus 16 or plus 16 is 100.
No, you're 100%.
Give me that look.
I thought you were saying
right?
84 were under contract. And I was like, hold on.
I would prefer to frame it this way because people have such a fear of losing out on homes that they fixate on, oh my God, 30% under contract. Well, if 30% is under contract, 70% is not. So that's your realistic, just based on price ranges alone. When you start getting into neighborhoods and property types and condition and updates and remodels and turnkey or not turnkey, the percentages suddenly change radically, especially for turnkey houses. Okay.
Way more specific.
Now, so how about Denver? In Denver,
I would say at the 2 to 3 price range, I'd imagine the condition is there's got to be kind of more qualitative factors to it than kind of what, talking about the amount of homes available within the $2 to $3 million range. The condition in that price range should be pretty solid, right?
Not always.
Not all, and then, location.
Boulder has a reputation. Boulder in particular, Denver too, but Boulder more so, has a reputation of sellers doing nothing and just throwing it on the market. And this is one of the reasons we work so hard with our sellers to prep the house at all price ranges to make sure we've done the easy and low-hanging fruit at a minimum and preferably go way beyond that. Like we just saw a listing yesterday with buyers throughout Boulder. We went everywhere. Hamish, you weren't there, but the house was just grungy. I'm like, seriously, like and my buyer even noted it. He's like, there are marks on the paint where somebody's dirty hand has brushed that wall 3,000 times and it just looks gross. There's an oily dark stain on the paint. And yes, it will cost you more to go have the house cleaned, professionally cleaned. And it will cost you a few $1,000s to paint it. But my God, the emotional experience for somebody that's spending $1 million is going to be radically different just by cleaning and painting. And you're not doing it. And these agents are not giving advice to their clients because they're saying things like, well, 36% under $1 million's under contract, so roll the die. There's a buyer for every house. You just have to drop the price more. And that philosophy, unfortunately, pervades our industry. And one of the things sellers can do is make sure they're getting good advice on how to prep and prepare to spend a little money. It will save you tens of thousands to spend a couple of thousand. You're spending pennies to get dollars. It's a no-brainer. But let me keep going through this data, Hamish. We'll come back to this price range thing because there are significant differences in quality.
Yeah, remind me when you do.
Okay, so 2 to 3 million. There are 107 houses on the market in Denver. 21 are under contract, so only 20% under contract, 80% available. And 3 million to 5 million in Boulder, you see 79 houses on the market. 5 are under contract. 5. So that is 6% of homes in the 3 to 5 million tranche, and that's doubling the tranche size, not a 1 million tranche, a 2 million tranche. Only 5 are under contract, and that means 6% of the market under contract. 94% of homes in that price range are available. And in Denver, there are 62 houses on the market in that price range. 11 are under contract. So Denver actually is seeing a healthier market in the 3 to 5 million range. 18% under contract, or 82% available. And then in this new category of homes that we're seeing in Boulder primarily, called ultra luxury. I toured 3 of them last week with a broker-only tour. 13 homes available in Boulder County over 10 million. Only 1 of them is under contract, so 8% on the basis of that simple math, but it could have easily been 0 if that one buyer decided they weren't in. And 8% currently under contract. In Denver, this market doesn't exist. And if it does, there may be some privately marketed estates that are 10 million plus. It's not very common. And because you're in such rarefied air, it's also the land of smoke, mirrors, and frankly bullshit on valuation. And you don't need to bleep that out, Hamish. This is an adult podcast. You got to watch out for the shadiness and snakiness at the ultra high end. There's a lot of we only market these homes privately to our luxury clients in the Sotheby's catalog. I gotta share with you. I used to work on Nantucket in real estate and supported an office full of brokers. And in the 3 years I was with this brokerage, we saw 0 deals that came from somebody that came from a high-end catalog buyer. We used to advertise with the Wall Street Journal. We used to pay tons of money to make sure that we were in the local newspaper called the Ink and Mirror. And it was insane how much we spent on paper marketing, including this very luxurious Nantucket real estate book. Nobody ever looked at the book and picked up the phone and said, I'm flying in on my Gulfstream and I want to go look at this one house. That's not how it worked. Ever.
Yeah.
How it works is that they are already here and they talk to their community about who should I talk to? I'm looking for a home. And they get connected through a referral network to supposedly the right broker. Often, in my opinion, not the right broker, but that's how the world works. Referrals are powerful. But 10 million plus is a new category in Boulder. It has not existed for long, and it does not exist at all in Denver. But at least there are 13 options on the market in Boulder if you're shopping for this. But watch out for that. See, I read that whole book on luxury strategy recently, Hamish, and there are certain hallmarks of luxury that are necessary, and price is certainly one piece of it. But it's the price without the backstory,
right? The context.
Maybe you've got a nameplate architect like Charles Hartling in Boulder to help drive that price up. Maybe you have the best craftsmen that you flew in from Europe, okay, and you hosted them for a summer. There needs to be like a really powerful story for why this asset is so much higher than the market would suggest otherwise, based on location, square footage, age of the home, updates, the basic nuts and bolts of what make house valuation. Lot size, of course,
right?
Important.
Location, views, go on. Yeah.
I mean, maybe a celebrity owned it. We've had a few of those in Boulder, but I've never seen one go into the ultra luxury category. It just happened to have been owned by a celebrity who owned it for a period of time and sold it. Anyway, we'll save the ultra luxury category for a different podcast. I think it's a very interesting market to talk about. And certainly if you're buying, we would love to represent you in that 10 million plus category. We will give you our honest advice at any price range, however, whether you could be entry level, and we will serve you with deep commitment to integrity and fiduciary responsibility, not to lining our pockets. We do want you to make a smart real estate decision. So, okay. Yeah. Whew. That's a lot of words, Hamish.
Yep.
A lot of words.
Jump down there a bit.
What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a huge kind of drop off in the ultra market. I'm kind of looking at it, thinking of what's the most active or where are things going, and it's definitely like 500 to a million, right? That's where we're seeing the most amount of activity at the moment. There's more activity from these numbers in the 2 to 3 than I initially thought. I know a while ago you did an analysis, and at past 3 it kind of dropped off the most, so it makes sense. Yeah.
Well, okay. I mean, all of that's useful. I guess I would like to talk about the question you pointed to, and that was, how do these, what happens as you move up? Do you get more turnkey homes as you move up the food chain on these prices? You definitely get a lot more value per dollar the further up you go. So per unit of value that you're buying for $1, as you move up in the price range, you get a lot more units of value, whatever that units of value might be. It might be location, it could be updates. You get a lot more house on a dollar per square basis. Typically the larger the home, same idea. The home should be more turnkey, more ready to go, more luxurious, more chock full of features the higher up in price you go, or in a commensurately better location, or with a better design. And right. I've seen some homes in the 4+ category in Boulder that were not a good design. I mean, you know the house I'm thinking about. We're not going to mention the address because I don't want to embarrass the people that bought it. But we showed this house in northwest Boulder, glass house, poor location, complete lack of privacy. We showed that house like 5 different times. Even did sound tests on that house for a particular client. And at the end of the day, we were talking about window film treatments to try to create privacy because it was so exposed throughout the house.
Yeah.
Fishbowl. Total fishbowl.
Yeah.
So it's not always true you get a much better house the higher up in price you go. You would think it is true, but it's not always true. You got to be a little judicious. And you can't, in my opinion, there are certain rules to buying. One of those rules should be don't fall in love. And hopefully choose somebody that will help you not be your own worst enemy. And the tricky part of that is that you choose somebody that's trying to act as your advisor. You need to want the contrarian advice. You cannot get offended or upset by somebody who doesn't agree with you all the time. It's way easier to agree. What a beautiful house. Should I write an offer? Absolutely. You should write an offer. It's the most beautiful house.
You should offer over. It fits you perfectly.
Yeah. It looks great on you. That's not us. If you're looking for somebody that's going to constantly just agree with you, then you're probably not going to be happy with our services. But at the end of the day, I think there's always another house. And the further down you go in price, the more inventory there is. But at certain price ranges, like 3 to 5, 94% availability. You should be able to negotiate aggressively. You should be able to get truly a dream home in that price range right now. This may change by summer, but this is where we are right now.
Did you have more you wanted to jump through?
Oh, I could. How many?
I'm seeing so many more graphs in here. Yeah.
How many tabs? I mean, Hamish, I have this spreadsheet I've been maintaining for years. We've got attached dwellings. We just skipped that. The general takeaway for attached dwellings in both Denver and Boulder is there is a mountain of inventory. It's even more inventory, and the market did not look like it was seeing a pretty big uptick in pending. There was a slight uptick in Denver pending, for example, for attached dwellings, 1.8% compared to a year ago, 9% more than average, the average of the past 3 years, but that's a very measly increase in pending compared to the active inventory that's up. I mean, compared to a year ago, 63% more condos and townhomes in Denver than last year. I mean, that's just astounding. And you want to talk about the average of the past 3 years, comparison to the average, 192% more inventory on the market this year in March than the average of the past 3 Marches. So pretty much a double. Right? That's astounding. And I've got some theories about that, why attached in both Denver and Boulder are seeing so much softness. I think part of that is buyers might be more rate sensitive, but the other part is that we've seen HOA dues just go through the roof. I mean,
oh my gosh, yeah.
And at least with a house, you can delay and defer. But with HOAs, you're paying every month for much higher maintenance and management fees. It's the low-hanging fruit of the industry, by the way, is management. Because those fees come in whether you're a good manager or bad, and you've signed a contract with the management company, so you're in it. And man, most of them are degrees of bad, not any degrees of good. So same pattern in Boulder, but not quite as aggressive. And then we skipped Longmont pretty much, other than houses. I think that's enough data for this segment. I really don't want to bore you guys. There's enough takeaways. We're going to put some of these takeaways in the upcoming newsletter, and if you are a buyer or a seller, there are specific action items or specific ways to think actionable. This is actionable information. You may want to adjust your strategy accordingly. And I'll say it one more time, but talk to us or your agent about an analysis that is very specific to your unique situation. And that, I think, is a good segment to Valmont, our shameless self-promotion segment. We have a beautiful new listing at 7940 Valmont. And if you're doing your market analysis of a home like this, you're now looking at protected views and the quality of those protected views, proximity to the city itself, because you can buy really cheap houses out in Kansas that have views of the plains, maybe Maybe you'll see views of the Colorado mountains in the far distance. I mean, there's a joke in Colorado
Telescope.
that you go east of 280, you go east of Highway 25, and you might as well be in Kansas. It gets, further and further. You get some pretty giant houses, but you're really far from anything, any city center, I should say. And so you got to layer on that level. So proximity to town, water rights, and the seniority of those water rights are really important. And then the design of the home, right? So this particular house, 7940 Valmont, is all living on one level, and all the bedrooms are generously sized without being too big and frankly useless. Like homes, you often see homes that cross 6,000 square feet.
Yeah.
And either they're full of bedrooms, or the sizes of the rooms are just really kind of awkward, in my opinion. Although, again, we'll help
Too
you
much
buy
to kind of reasonably
you could buy
use. Yeah.
We'll help you buy a
No
20,000
judgments.
square foot house. If that's what you want, that's not our job to judge you. I'm just sharing my personal experience with buyer impressions of really big houses. I think this house is in the perfect sweet spot. We have way more buyers that want a 3,000 to 4,000 square foot house than the ones that want 8,000 square foot houses.
All day. Yeah.
So this house has all of those things. And when you layer on that analysis and you layer on its acreage and its ag zoning and its water rights and its proximity to Boulder and its age of construction and its updates, it's not a flip. Everything in this home was done by the homeowners for themselves. Suddenly you realize that it's in, a market of one. Like there's nothing else on the market currently. And we may get one competitor this summer. It would not surprise me if we have none, because most of them are going to exceed 5 million. Like they're going to cross into a different category very easily. And this one is very generously, reasonably priced, in my opinion, at its current list at 2.7. So I can talk about this active listing because guess what? It's my active listing. That's why it's called shameless self-promotion. And I think it's a great house. In fact, I will tell you this piece, Hamish, and you can truth test me on this. How often do I take Leah to see houses with me?
I'd say at least at most probably 3 times a year.
Yeah, that's about right. And I dragged her to come see this one because I'm like, honey, this could be our house. We might want to buy this house. But we're also very in love with where we live. And it's probably not going to happen. For us,
Stay
we listed
posted
it
for a potential shameless self-promotion on Currents.
It's a great house.
Home.
It's my current home is not on the market at all, but
Could be.
7940 Valmont is an amazing listing, and you should take a look at it. And be sure to check out our video too, because a lot of agents don't bother with video, and they certainly aren't promoting it. The best you're going to get is they stick it on the MLS and hope. And we are actively marketing this home on social media, but it's a great property. It's absolutely worth your time and attention to check it out. It may be gone by the time you hear this podcast.
And yeah, I'll link it down below in the description to our website, the videos there, and a bunch of other information too.
Yep.
So give that a look.
And speaking of which, after this pod, we have some phone calls to make, Hamish.
We do. Yep. And a 4 p.m. video call.
That's right.
Yep.
Is that what's happening?
Yep.
Is that what they want? Okay, great. So let's talk about a couple of other properties, and we're going to talk about them pretty quickly. We have a really nice townhome that has been thoroughly updated, and it is on the east side of sort of central Boulder. I can't give you the address or other details, but I will say, that's right, Hamish, the one you're highlighting. I will say that property has a surprisingly generous patio, like a little enclosed garden area that's bigger than all the rest of the ones I've ever seen in this complex. I've had friends live there and have attended parties. These homes are classic townhome style. 2 bedrooms up top, come down the flight of stairs, living room, kitchen, nice
spaces.
layout for entertaining. Yeah, and then it's got a 1-car detached garage. So there are not a lot of...
Oh, and a spot too. It's got a reserved spot as well.
And a reserved spot.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of inventory for what I think of as adult reasonable. I don't know. There's no category called adult reasonable, but there. If you look at Boulder real estate for attached dwellings, you see a lot of student, meaning that there's high student density in the neighborhood, and you can, by the way, discriminate against students. They're not a protected class, and the reality is,
crazy.
A lot of people don't like living next to students, okay, because they're in the prime of their youthful life, and
they don't get hungover. Yeah, they take advantage of that.
Like you, Hamish, they don't get hungover. And they may be enjoying an exuberant lifestyle that intrudes in your peace and quiet enjoyment. So when you look at it with that lens on Boulder real estate, this particular property is an adult appropriate. Like in my 20s or 30s, I would not have been embarrassed to own this. I would have brought my boss over for dinner, friends over for dinner, and I would be doubtful that there'd be like a party going on next door that's going to cause disruption. Like there's no kegger going on. And there's a lot of stuff like that in Boulder where you might get a kegger happening. And
to add to, like, the backyard space is really solid. It's functionally laid out. There's provisions for a hot tub.
Yeah, there's
that's
nice
not giving away too much, right? Yeah,
nope,
it's both bedrooms have balconies. Like, it's
cool.
It's a killer property. Yeah,
I would live there without hesitation at all. Another one of our new listings coming up is similar in nature. It is adult friendly, adult appropriate, very low student density. It's a large townhome. It's larger than most houses in Boulder, but it's not too big. And it has a nice 2-car attached garage. It's on the west side of town, north of Broadway, in a quiet spot, steps away from Wonderland Lake, not very far at all from, you could walk to Lucky's. Lucky's, in my opinion, is better than Whole Foods by far. And
the Lucky's Monopoly Square.
The Lucky's Empire, the liquor store, the plaza of Lucky's. I mean, they're a fantastic little grocery, and they're beloved. Especially now that Kroger has divested, they're back to being beloved. And then we have our last one coming up, and that is a property in West Highland Park, backs to West Highland Park in Greater Table Mesa. So this is a South Boulder property, super large lot.
This one's coming soon today. So
is it?
By the time it's published, yep.
Let's go ahead. Yeah. Why don't you mention the address, Hamish?
Yeah, 2015 Kohler Drive. It's Kohler Mesa Highland Park. It backs directly onto Highland Park. It's a dang near half acre lot. It's 0.47 acres. Gorgeous property, 1966 construction with kind of mid-century modern touches to it. So the interior and the living room is kind of, I want to say, gorgeous. Ian's gave me the measurements for it. It's 19 by 19 in that great room, and it's this exposed wooden beam, kind of gorgeous light, frames the mountains.
Vaulted
very
ceilings.
Pretty spot. Yeah, vaulted
classic
ceilings.
Mid-century where you can look through the transom windows and see the beam continue. It's a very nice touch.
Yeah. The sellers have been extremely diligent in prepping it for list. I'll link that down below as well, the video for that one. And it lives really, really well as is. And I know we've looked a lot for kind of future potential as well, but we don't want to say too much there. Worth a look, though. Absolutely. And desired. Apparently up the street, there was another home going for sale that also backed to Highland Park, and the neighbors reached out and scooped it up before it could hit the public market. So I'm wondering if this neighborhood in general is getting a little bit protected by the neighbors scooping them up.
Well,
so
I mean, if you look in this neighborhood, you will see homes that are near that ultra luxury category. I mean, stunningly beautiful. I think they're in the 5 to 7 range, 5 to 8 range, not the 10 plus, because 10 plus is make-believe land for some of these listings. But it's certainly a luxurious neighborhood and a beautifully updated. People are investing significant capital for a reason, and that's because you have protected views. And in the case of this particular property, it backs to the park. It's a city-owned park. And it's barely ever. The people that use this park are pretty much entirely the neighborhood that backs to it. The access to it for the public is severely limited. It's one of these parks where you wonder. It's at the top of Dartmouth. You could access it right next to the reservoir. You kind of wonder how a park like this got created, because today you would have people out with pitchforks be like, "You mean our city land?"
No kidding.
Like, you're creating a city-owned park that primarily just serves 20 houses that back to it, or whatever the number is, and has these views to die for. I mean, these views are epic.
Incredible.
From up there.
Yeah, check out the video. Insane views.
We will put a link in the show notes. And also, Hamish, let's put links in the to both Valmont and this new listing in the YouTube description as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, show notes, description, absolutely.
All right.
Check it out. And Ian's throwing a open house this weekend, I believe, on Saturday. Yep, Saturday, cool. 12 to 2. I'm looking at his calendar. So if you're listening to this on Friday, you've got a weekend plan figured out.
Jump on it.
Yeah. Great.
All right. Let's move on to a segment we call Sales of the Week. And this is really lessons from recent closings. And unlike active inventory, where we are not allowed to discuss it unless it happens to be our listing, we can talk about these closings with a vengeance. We can really tell you what really happened or what we think really happened. We can talk about whether they were priced appropriately, the negotiated discount, why you might want to buy in this neighborhood, what you might want to look out for in this neighborhood. Like, there's a little lesson from each and every one of these deals that I think are pertinent for your better understanding of the local market. So should we do we?
And they're not our price? Listings, right? We're True. Doing lessons learned, but we're intelligently gaining wisdom from other people's actions.
True. Well, we're talking about the location. We're talking about why this might have sold for list or more than list in some cases, or why it might have sold for less than list, and whether somebody may have gotten a deal or not. And hopefully this helps you understand Boulder real estate a little better, as well as gives you a little insight into how we think about real estate when we advise our buyers and sellers. So let's do this by price range going up, Hamish. We'll save the juiciest and most expensive and luxurious eye candy listings for the end.
I was wondering how you wanted to do it.
Yeah, let's do it low to high. So our first closing is 3820 Colorado Avenue in Wellman Creek. So if you are driving east on Colorado Avenue, let's say you're on 30th Street and you hook a right or a left, you turn east on Colorado Ave, you're now driving past what I think of as kind of the serious part of CU, where there's a lot of research buildings and newer buildings. Those are some very nice, I think they're 100 million plus buildings that were built on the north side of Colorado Ave. On the south side of Colorado Ave, you'll see two developments as you move east towards Foothills Parkway. One is mostly blue, and then the other is mostly yellow. In fact, it's all yellow. And the all yellow one is called Wellman Creek, and it was built in the late 90s. And this townhome development, it is again one of those developments that are lower density of students. You're going to find some students living here because it's so close to CU, but the age of construction and the design is really attractive. And within that development, there are a handful of them that actually back to the bike path. And I know this spot pretty well because I run along this little bike path quite frequently, maybe not as frequently as I should, but I do run past it quite frequently. And always look at these south-facing units with a bit of envy because they back right to all this open space, and there's a little drainage corridor, which I think is plenty low enough that you're probably not going to see much flood risk there. And this is one of those that finally was on the market. I bet you if we did the little analysis, we're not going to do it right now, but if I did it just showing you how often these south-facing units transact, it would be like one every 5 years maybe. It might be one every 7 years. It's super rare. So 1,000 square foot townhome, traditional layout. The 2 bedrooms are on the upper, just like the one we're about to list. And they listed it at $650 on April 16th. And then boom, it went under contract pretty much right away. So 3 days and it went into pending mode, not even looking for backup offers. And then it just closed on April 18th. For $635. So they did take a bit of a haircut to the list price. Interestingly enough, a very unique number, $635,182. Yeah. And there were no additional disclosed concessions. It was a normal, conventional fixed rate mortgage that got it. I think likely somebody wrote an offer that waived contingencies and said, you know what, we want this place. We don't want to lose this place. And we're going to write a really strong offer with waiving all sorts of stuff just so we get it. And why $635,182 is very unusual of a number, but that's the number they landed on. Yeah. There is not much in the way of photography. I think that this person
Remember, this is linked in the description.
Right. There is if you look at the description, there's a link to a video by a drone company that does photography for realtors.
Oh, it's all the photos, not the video. It's everything. All of the listing material
did everything.
is on an external website. Okay. Very weird strategy from the listing agent, right?
I think it was added afterward. So the reason I say that is that this listing description is all caps. Okay, yeah. Like your grandmother wrote it, and this is how she screams at you, all caps, in her email or text message. Like all caps is I mean, I don't know what to say about that. Okay, that's you're paying significant commissions, and you're getting all caps listing descriptions, and
the picture's not on the anyway.
The actual the link to the media, off-site media, which normally you don't see off-site links, but somehow these people have gotten away with it, is not in all caps, right? And neither is remove footwear or use clean covering upon entry. Clean covering, okay, like
interesting.
Like, what are we roping up? Very odd listing, but from a property perspective, other than the fake sunset. That looks cartoony, it's a fantastic spot. It is really, that's what sold it. I think they could have gotten full list if they had maybe slowed it down. But who knows how many offers they got, if they got more than one or not. But great property, super desirable. I would buy it in a heartbeat for the location alone.
Yeah. Yeah, I showed a unit in there probably at the start of the year with one of our clients, and it showed really, really well the backing to the bike path. I mean, you already talked about it, but how convenient for kind of just getting out there and into the city or to an event down the street or anything. Like, come on. So good.
I mean, it does introduce a security risk when you back to the bike path, but the way these are set back with their own private fenced areas that you could lock, I think the security risk is pretty minimal. It's not downtown where you see a lot of people camping along the bike path. This is way east. And is it possible one day that that's going to become an area that you see people camping in, transients camping in? I don't think so. There's no real place to hang out. There's no retail zone. There's no drug bazaar that's happening downtown. It's a very, in my perception and understanding of that location, it's very safe.
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't strike me as one where that could happen or would be kind of cause for. Yeah, anyhow.
I mean, even the students who choose to live there are very likely going to be more serious students because they're away from the party zone. They're in the serious part of CU. And that's how I typically describe it, is if you're buying something downtown for your CU student, or you're buying something on the hill, you're in the party zone, right? That's where...
Yep. The hill is just...
The hill in particular, anywhere near any of the Greek places, you're in the party zone. And if I was 18, 19 years old, that's exactly where I would want to be. But if my parents were footing the bill, I can tell you they'd want to be on the serious side of CU. And this is on the serious side of CU.
Yeah. So, the next one we're benchmarking, not benchmarking, but in retrospect, we sold a listing in the same area. This one is 3885 Telluride Place, and Osman muted the mic, but I'm still going to say Robitussin, or bless you for your cough. Manners. Anyhow.
You want to lead with this one, Hamish? You're about to jump in. Do you want to keep going?
We can lead with it. Yeah. So this one, let me pull it up. 3885 Telluride Place. Our listing was 3707 Telluride Circle, which was a little bit more interior of this neighborhood. This one, it's an end unit townhome, similar to ours. However, while it does have some pretty gorgeous open space views, it does kind of border a double yellow line, which is kind of that main thorough around the Shennerhan Ridge neighborhood. And looking through the architecture is in the exact same.
Greenbrier Boulevard is the street that wraps. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Doing my best.
You're doing great. Keep going.
Yeah. One of the things that we were kind of paying a really close attention to when we were listing and pricing 3707 was the competition. And we kind of recognized at a certain point that all of the competition had disappeared and we were the only game in town. So we took that to be, well, do we want to lower our price or do we want to hold fast? And we held fast. And this property sold for $825 and ours sold for $839 in the off-season market. So I don't know, maybe I put this one on here for our sales of the week, maybe as a pat on the back. But
Yeah. I mean, this property is bigger. This property has one more bedroom, has one more bathroom, and
open space views are actually pretty pretty.
The open space views are great. When you look at the photos, the interior, the kitchen looks fine. There's some dated aspects to it, but it's not bad. A lot of if this had been a competitor when we listed, we would have likely listed at the same or below, and probably below because it's a lot bigger, and yet we got a higher price in the off season. So the deal itself, it listed on March 11th as coming soon. It was active on the 14th, and within 2 weeks it was under contract on the 30th, and it closed on the 21st for $825. Let's see, were there any disclosed concessions? There were not. And that's how the cookie crumbled. I mean, I would prefer to have our condo, the one that we listed and sold, but only if I didn't need the extra bedroom and bath. Like, the extra bedroom and bath should make this one worth more. And I don't think the proximity, like the actual physical space between this house and Greenbrier is a major factor, because that street's pretty quiet. You're looking at about 100 feet from this house.
Yeah, it's pretty far.
So I don't think it's a factor, but in any event, pat on the back for our marketing of our listing. And this is a pretty good townhome if you're shopping for townhomes. Being in Shanahan Ridge is epic. The open space is amazing, and I don't even see. It's funny. I don't even see a photo of the. Is there a photo of the trails?
Nope, no, there's a photo showing how close it is to the open space, and not to rag on these guys either. I think it's more of just here's where our headspace was, and here's an example of a house that sold for less when I don't know. I don't think the market slid this much on attached, though. I mean, there's tons. We just
the data is showing. The data is showing there's a lot of downward pressure, so it quite easily could have slid down a little bit. And maybe this is the only offer they got, and they went with it. I mean, at the end of the day, we don't really know what happened in this deal, but it's a great property, and it is one that if you're thinking about shopping for an attached dwelling, you want sort of a small is beautiful style living situation, and you want to be really close to open space, and you don't want to be really close to students. An epic open space, by the way. This Shanahan Ridge should be on your radar.
Yeah. Keep an eye on this location.
All right, let's talk about 4944 Dakota Boulevard. This property was constructed in 1999 when they partied like it was 1999. And it is a smaller, I would say, 2-story house, 4 bedrooms, 4 baths, classic layout. Most of those bedrooms are on the upper level. There's one tucked in the basement. 4 bathrooms. One of those is a powder room. 2 are full, 1 3/4. Only a 1-car garage, but from a design perspective, this looks like your classic little American dream home, right? Like, this is almost like Norman Rockwell style house, and it didn't quite front on the park, but it was darn close. It was kind of kitty corner to Dakota Ridge Park. So yeah, that's kitty corner. The house itself listed at $1.2 million on March 11th, 1.22, and it closed at 1.21. So it went under contract after 2 weeks. So buyers had 2 weeks to look at this, and I'm pretty sure we took our buyers to see it too. And it closed at 1.21, so just $10,000 below list. And let's see, were there any disclosed? Yep, there was an additional $1,200 knocked off, kind of probably for a water heater. That's like $1,200 sounds like a water heater. Overall, the house itself presented well. But Dakota, say that again.
$1,200 radon or water heater, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Dakota Ridge, we've done a whole video on what you need to know about this neighborhood. We'll provide a link in the description so you can check it out. There's a lot to know, but big takeaways are that lot sizes are usually really small, and the homes are kind of maxed out on the lot. In fact, you're unlikely to build homes this large on lots this size anymore because Boulder has passed various ordinances to make that difficult. Really close
Stay
to...
tuned for the news segment of our podcast.
Yep, stay tuned. Well, that's Boulder County, but yeah, stay tuned for that. More house size problems. And, it's the small is beautiful type house is certainly a popular type of living situation. I think I would demand a 2-car garage, but not everyone feels that way. Dakota Ridge is also a little close to the homeless shelter. It's unlikely that people that are experiencing homelessness are going to wander through your yard, but it is a factor. You're also really close to Protos and all that shopping stuff in the I almost said Hollywood. In the Holiday neighborhood,
yep.
And in Uptown, and with Nobo's Art District First Fridays happening, it's a good spot for it's improving. It's one of the reasons our office is there. I feel like in the long run, this little part of North Boulder is a winner. So, pretty good deal for a basic house in Dakota Ridge.
Yeah, I'll say it looks really slender in those pictures, and then the interior pictures, it looks like there's a good width in the home. It's not like one of those row homes.
Well, look, a 2,000 square foot house designed in the 90s, built in the 90s, is going to feel dramatically different than a 2,000 square foot house built in the 50s. It's totally a different, as they said in the airplane movie, it's an entirely different type of flying altogether. It's not the same house. Like, their square footage is the same, but they're not the same in any way, shape, or form. The storage is different. The ceiling heights are different. The layouts are open in the 90s. It's a much more livable house for 1.22 or 1.21.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you send the kids to go play in the park.
Mm-hmm.
Just stay away from weirdos.
And no double garage, but I do appreciate the slip that kind of goes up into the right of the garage. At least you can park more junkers there.
Yeah, maybe, or have a workbench. All right, Hamish, let's move on to our next one. 819 9th Street. You chose this one, so I would like you to lead it. Tell us why this home is notable and why what do we learn from this deal?
Yeah, well, I picked this one because I knew the reaction I'd get from Osman. So it's in the name. 9th Street is one of the main thoroughfares from top of Chautauqua down to Pearl Street. Like it's a super busy road, and I picked this one, and Osman
all the way to North Boulder Park. You can just keep on
all
going.
The way. Yeah, so I picked this one, sent it over to Oz, and Oz goes, I hates it. I hates 9th Street. And I said, well, that's why we should talk about it. It's an interesting one. It sold for over list. So let me go and pull up the pricing here. I'm not on
I'll show the pricing. I'll share the pricing. It's so it listed for 1.25. It sold for 1.274. So it sold for roughly $25,000 over list. It was under contract within 5 days, and it was not a cash deal. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, that's good enough.
Not a cash deal.
I had limited time to find this property, so I saw 9th Street and I saw over asking, and I was like, done. We look into it, and the interior shows, putting it lightly, wear and well lived in. Looking a little bit further, it's marketed definitely towards those college students, and maybe kind of later on in the conversation, but I've heard that as a general rule of thumb, if you're looking at the kind of Chautauqua Hill neighborhood and the hill as a whole, you want to be west of 9th Street to kind of avoid the riffraff of the college students. And that's the general kind of guideline I've heard, Oz. I don't know. But this home visually from some of the pictures raises some questions. There's 3 doorways in one of the photos, or archways, and they're mismatched as far as being, they're not level at all. There's kind of some waviness going, the trim
on those doors. Yeah.
Looks to be like a cobblestone foundation. The house just looks well enjoyed. I'm gonna try and use all my marketing techniques here, but from a rental perspective, I could imagine it would do fairly well. The fact that they financed it is kind of curious, and I wouldn't live here if I was thinking about it from a primary residence, not with 9th Street, and not with kind of the condition that it's in. Yeah. And you said it's pre-war too, right? So isn't it historical?
Yeah. I mean, all of what you shared is true, so I'm going to reiterate some of that. 9th Street is a very busy street, and it has been it used to act, it's wider than most streets in Boulder because it used to have a streetcar that would go up and down. And the yards are very small, typically. And this particular cottage was built in 1923, so it's pre-war and subject to historic review. And they do care more about pre-war than the general 50-year-old rule. Like, there's everything that's older than 50 years still gets some sort of historic review. But pre-war gets a lot more attention by those in power to do those things. And you may or may not be granted permits to do things like modify the exterior, or if you wanted to scrape it and say, hey, it's a 6,300 square foot lot, let's build a cool duplex here. Probably not going to happen because it's a pre-war property in the city of Boulder. I do see a cobblestone or fieldstone foundation, and fieldstone foundations, even though this one's lasted over 100 years, they typically need repair and maintenance, and they start to get kind of crumbly. There's lots of different ways people have tried to shore up fieldstone foundations in the last 100 years. They've poured interior concrete walls and lifted the house. We've seen that. But the ultimate solution, the correct solution, in my opinion, is to lift the whole structure up, remove the foundation, and pour a proper concrete foundation, maybe even dig out the basement. But this property is in a location that doesn't really support that sort of endeavor. And it's a 5-bedroom, 2-bath. I'm pretty sure this is a deal that reflects the recent removal of occupancy laws.
Good point.
In Boulder. Yeah. And it's basically a student property, meaning that you're really close to Chautauqua, you're really close to campus, and students don't care that it's a busy road. They're the ones making the noise anyway. And so likely somebody's parent threw down for this. And I don't think it's a investor, because the economics of where market rate rent falls and the purchase price and maintenance on a historic home and the cost of capital mortgage rates for investment properties don't line up right now at all. So the person who bought this very likely is a student parent, and they're going to fill it full of other students. So it's going to have at least 5 students living in it, and it probably has had that for a long time. So, in fact, it was noted that it's currently rented below market, and that the cap rate is great in the broker remarks.
Of course it is. We're selling.
Really? They don't actually reveal the mortgage rent, but I have a hard time believing the cap rate would be great. But they do market that you could even add a 6-bedroom by moving the laundry to an outside room and consider the entryway into the lower level. 1 bedroom is non-conforming. At least one of those photos show a bedroom that doesn't have an egress window, or at least the windows in the photo is not an egress window. So there's safety issues as well. And then knob and tube wiring, asbestos, lead-based paint, hope. All of those things.
Historical home due diligence, yeah.
Expect all of that. Due diligence for a historic home should be, is easily twice as much, and maintenance and repairs are easily twice as much as a normal house. But with that said, I don't hate 9th Street, Hamish. In fact, there's a house that sold roughly around this price, I think about 5 or 7 years ago, that I loved. It was every time I drive by it, I look lovingly over my shoulder as I go by, because that house was so cool, except for this one thing, 9th Street. And I'm like, it even tempted me to consider throwing away one of my investing rules and buying that house, because it was just so classic. Better than 90% of the mansions on Mapleton, this house.
Wow.
Better than 90% of them. Such a great house, but 9th Street. Anyway, that's 819 9th Street. Interesting deal. I'm surprised it went for over list, but maybe there's more than one CU parent throwing down the Benjamins.
Hey, that's not a bad way to do it. All
right. Let's move on to our next sale of the week. 84 Douglas Court. It was listed for 1.3. It sold for 1.4, despite being on the market for an extensive period of time. It was originally listed in June of 2024. Granted, it was originally listed in June. I mean, it's kind of strange. There's 2 listings, Hamish. One on June 6th at 1.8. And then another listing that began on iRes on June 18th. So they listed on both ReColorado and iRes. By the way, you don't need to list on both. One pulls the other. So now they have 2 listings starting at 1.8 and then 12 days later dropped to 1.55 on iRes. but on ReColorado, but IRES dropped to 1.7 on June 13th. And then on June 18th, they withdrew it from IRES and just continued with the ReColorado listing, which sort of suggests that the agent didn't know that they're duplicating two listings, like they're on both MLSs with different price points. So they pulled the one on IRES, they left the one in ReColorado, and then they started chasing the market down for real. So by August, it was 1.5. And then 2 days later, August 1st, it was 1.5. August 3rd, they drop it to 1.4. So 2 days, they dropped it $100,000. And then November, it dropped to 1.375. And then the listing expired but was renewed. And then in January, it was listed at 1.3. It went under contract February 28th. So this is almost 2 full months after the price had dropped to 1.3. And then magically it closed for 1.4. And it's really unclear why.
The history on this house is a headache on its own.
Okay. But there's even more curiosity, all right, with this agent. And I don't want to name her because I don't understand how this listing could be accurate. So even though the sale price was 1.4, there was a $250,000 concession for personal property in this deal. So really, the sale price also has a $250,000 concession from the seller to the buyer for personal property. Why would the seller... Why this may be some sort of tax situation, Hamish, where I don't know what personal property comes up to $250,000, right? Like there's some nice furnishing in this house, for sure. But what else is in the house that added up to $250,000?
This isn't a mountain home that strikes it, but when I think mountain homes, I'm thinking maybe weapons. But even then, how are you getting to 6 figures plus?
$250,000 concession. I almost wonder if she missed a zero and it was a $25,000 concession. I've never seen a concession that large for a home that, I mean, it's a significant portion of the sale price. So the only thing I could think is that this is like there's some sort of tax situation happening where they decided that they're going to call a portion of the property personal property to reduce the sale price, because the real price then is 1.4 minus 250. Which is 1.15 is the actual sale price of this
she
house.
slipped and put in an extra zero.
Maybe, but that's a pretty big, frankly, fuck up. I don't know how else to say it. Like, I know it's just a zero, but if you're entering data into the MLS, it should be accurate. But let's talk a little bit more about this house, because it is in the mountains, and mountain homes are subject to a little more fire risk for sure, higher insurability costs. And then there's a whole nother checklist of things like drive time, winter access, that buyers should be thinking about. And I love mountain homes, but the reality is that they need a lot more due diligence and a dose of realism if you're going to choose to live in the mountains. Obviously, I do, and I think about these things quite a bit in our decisions. The house itself is super cute. The pool is really nice. The views are really nice. The updates, I mean, some of the trim choices are a little dated, a little bit custom and unique. Like the bathroom, some of the tile work is a little extreme in the bathroom, but okay, fine.
Do you see the thatch roof as well?
The thatched roof looks like, please don't drop an ember on me. But long story short, this is the type of thing that I think a buyer, that realizes they're going to be here a lot, i.e. Sundance, but they want that Colorado experience, but still want to be 15 to 20 minutes from downtown. That's what this property, property would check the boxes on. And 1.4 for under an acre of land, but keep in mind it's not about the land, it's about what else is around it. You got to check the ownership of the parcels that are adjacent. It could be that you have, protected views. So cool house, interesting deal. Weird deal notes that are going to be a mystery. I look forward to seeing the note to self, Hamish. We should check the tax assessor in like a month or two to see how the tax assessor treated the sale, because it's a weird deal.
Let me make that note. You're good to go.
Okay, let's move on. 4302 Apple Way. And this is in a neighborhood in North Boulder called Orange Orchard. It's just north of J Road. So it's sort of the intersection. Take the intersection of US 36 and J Road, where that church is, head directly northeast from there, and you're going to run into the Orange Orchard neighborhood. There is neighborhood access to trails behind it that are spectacular. I'm not entirely convinced all of those trails are on public land, by the way. The further you go north and to the west as you try to connect to Boulder Valley Ranch, I'm pretty sure you're trespassing across a whole bunch of private property, but it's been used as de facto open space for a long time. But if you're buying it, assuming that that is truly open space, you may be in for a rude surprise. The house itself, the neighborhood itself has larger lots. This one is on a 21,000 square foot lot built in the 70s. And I'm not even, is it actually technically part of the city of Boulder? It might be technically unincorporated Boulder County. Worth double checking. So that's the thing about Boulder, is sometimes you see pockets of unincorporated Boulder County, but it isn't really relevant for purposes of this analysis. It's a classic 2-story house with 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, reasonable square footage, 2,800. Some nice updates. And a neighborhood that the reason I'm talking about this is I think this is a really cool neighborhood. And you get a blend between kind of a feeling of rural living in the country without really being very far from the city of Boulder at all. You generally have some pretty good privacy from the neighbors, and you also have great access to that trails network, which I've run on many times and hopefully will continue to exist for a long time. So cool property, right? That's what caught my eye. And it was listed.
The mountains are putting on a show on these photos too.
Yeah, the photos are great.
Yeah,
the photos are great, and that's one of the things we need to think about sometimes. Hamish is sneaking away just to take some exterior shots in the prep phase because sunny day photos look so good in this time of year.
Yeah, seriously.
Okay, so originally listed in October, and strike that. Originally listed in July at 1.675. And by September, they had pulled it off. And then they brought it back in October for 1.66. And then they expired that listing at the end of October, so only for a month. And then they brought it back this spring. I don't know if the original agents got fired or not. Doesn't really matter. But they brought it back. This is why we frankly recommend not listing in late summer and fall. Like, the data is really clear. It's not a great time to list. Like, you're better off doing all your prep work and then listing it in February or March. And it was listed in February at 1.6. It went under contract within the first 10 days. But that buyer number one bailed out for some reason, not disclosed. And it went back on the market at 1.6. And this time it took a couple more weeks, but they found a buyer. Nope, sorry, they dropped it 50 grand. And then they found a buyer, and it sold at 1.495. So basically 1.5 for the house, which I think is total fair value. Cash buyer, small additional concession of $2,500. And I think that given the location, it's a really good find. It is a north-facing house, and it is sort of wrapped around Apple Way a little bit on the turn, but frankly, you're not going to see a lot of traffic up there. So
yeah,
cool spot.
Really cool spot. And pretty home.
Great house.
Only thing. You open the door, first thing you're met with is stairs. Some buyers don't like that.
Good point.
I think that's it. Yeah.
We bring it up every time we see a house like that. Like, opening the doors into a stair corridor doesn't feel good. But, that's also, this is a classic design. I've seen so many houses like that. So it might be fine. In fact, one of my best friends in high school had this house growing up. Basically the exact same house.
It's real close to my grandparents too. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. This is our last sale of the week. We don't normally do 7, Hamish, and you were right. I was wrong. 7 is too much.
We're doing okay on time, man. This one, I was thinking to compare and contrast with the 9th Street one, but they're just too different.
Well, they are different in terms of the busyness of location. So that's where the similarity ends, however. This home was on the Historic Homes for the Holiday tour by Historic Boulder, the nonprofit that I'm a member of and strongly advocate supporting if you love historic homes in our community. And this particular house was built in the 20s by a name brand architect. And they chose a Tuscan vernacular style that is classic. And when we toured the home with both clients and during the house tour, it's just so well maintained and so lovely for what it is, right? For this historic home. with its historic home limitations. It was, if it had been in any
yeah.
other location, it would have flown off the market. And granted, maybe Italianate style is, this Tuscan vernacular revival thing. It may not be what people envision in their mountain home today. Like it's kind of a blend in their brain of Italy and Colorado, but it's still
it's
so
not gaudy.
Cool. It's not gaudy. It's not gaudy. Well, that Italian in Italy is never gaudy. And that's not true.
Good point. No,
Not
but
true. It's not okay. Well, they're careful, Hamish. It's starting to sound like you got some opinions about Italians, Italian style. But with that said, it was the coolest house. Honestly, it was so cool, except for this one bad thing that you just can't fix.
Location.
There's nothing you can do about it. It's right on Baseline Road, and Baseline Road is just constantly busy. And man, I watched our buyers try to rationalize it, and I did my best to try to keep them from doing it because
at least it's stone.
Look, if it was anywhere else on the west side of town, it would have been 3+ for this house, except for the busy road factor. You can't fix it. I could feel the emotional charm and appeal. Like the design was so interesting and unique and custom and clearly loved by many owners over many years. You're owning a piece of heritage for Boulder when you buy a house like this. I mean, when it's on the historic Boulder tour, okay, like the community is aware of and loves the design of this home. You have experts walking around talking about it to the general public. That's what the historic homes tours are like. And still, this house just sat there because of its really, frankly, severely compromised location. So here's the listing history. In May, it was on the market for 3.2. They started cutting the price. First, a $200,000 haircut to bring it into the under 3, which was smart. They should have done that day one. And then they cut the price another $100,000, $150,000. It came down to 2.6 by November, and then they pulled it off at the end of the year. They brought it back in mid-January, which is the right move, but $100,000 even less expensive. And they started cutting by smaller chunks by February. They dropped it $25,000, and then another $50,000 by March. And then they finally found a buyer. March 28th, it went under contract, and it closed for $2.377750. So basically another $100,000 off the list price to make this thing move. And ultimately, when you've done all of the marketing and you've even gotten historic Boulder involved and you've got great photography, I mean, you're down to just cutting the price when, I mean, it could have been staged differently. Certainly there are things you could do, but tough to sell a home in a busy location. I mean, we've gotten to the point where if a client wants us to take a listing in a compromised location, we're going to make them sign like a 2-year listing agreement because you need a buyer that can look past that location. Maybe they're hard of hearing, or they're so in love with the style and they recognize the value, because if it wasn't for that busy location, it would be $3.5 million. And maybe they're coming from New York City and they've been living, next to the Hudson River Parkway or something.
Yeah,
and they're like,
this is quiet to me. Yeah.
I've had the view of the Major Deegan for the last 10 years of my life. So this is great. Do you know what the Major Deegan is?
I don't. But we've actually had clients, I think they came from, I don't know. They were from downtown and they came out here for showings and they were like, honestly, anywhere's quiet. But we still ended up getting them in a place pretty dang far removed from a busy road.
Don't do it. Don't buy on a busy road. Or if you do and you want me to sell it later, be prepared for a 2-year listing agreement.
Just setting expectations.
Right. Let's tell you the truth up front. That's the reality of busy locations. Could be the best house in the world, but the busy location is going to take out 90% of the buyer pool.
We had I was talking to a buyer the other day, and that was a real discussion. Is it's the most updated and fairly priced home, but also because it's in a compromised location. So you're going to be facing the same exact thing a couple years down the road, where you may have to have your house be the most updated and also be selling it for the least in the neighborhood. Like, is that going to feel good? You put a ton of work in and you're not even meeting the nearby comps. So yeah,
I mean, you can make money but you have to buy it right, and then you have to be prepared for a long holding period. The better model is buy the crappiest house in the best location and fix everything wrong with it. But sometimes you can't fix everything. Like I just saw a listing in Newlands where the backyard literally is a triangle, Hamish. And it's like, it's so penned in by the neighbors that there's no fixing this problem. You are so close to North Boulder Park, but holy cow. Like I toured this for our clients, and I just told them, this is not don't even bother. Like, this is not a house you want to buy.
Yeah, good call. Jeez.
What's funny, though, and I'm not going to mention the address about this house, but I want you to hear this, is that they leaned into the angles. So not only has the house got a really weird triangular backyard, the whole house is full of weird angles.
Wait, this is the triangles are my favorite shapes house.
Is
the one
it?
that we looked at, yeah, and then we thought it wasn't going to work right. You went and scoped it out.
Just
right?
2 days ago.
Yeah. That's right. I know this house. Yeah. I mean, it's neat.
It's nuts. It's nuts, Hamish. It's so funky. Anyway, that might be discussed in our upcoming fresh listings where I can share the address of that weird house.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. That's the end of the In the News. I'm sorry, that's the end of our sales of the week. We're moving on to In the News. Okay, let's talk about In the News. This is our segment where we touch base on some recent news articles that affect our local market. And the first one I want to talk about was hot off the presses today. And, hot off the presses late last night. And basically what has happened is that Boulder County commissioners have approved new limits on the size of houses in unincorporated parts of the county in a move they say is aimed at addressing affordability concerns and reducing carbon emissions. And the rule takes effect May 13th. So that's like a gunshot to go get your permits before May 13th. File your permit even if it's not complete, because they will likely keep you in the queue if you filed your permit early. That's usually what happens when they pass draconian rules like this. So this article is from Boulder Reporting Lab, reporter John Herrick. And so previous to this rule, the existing structure was that they determined your neighborhood, which was usually an arbitrary determination of your neighborhood, and then they would do an analysis of all the house sizes, and they would tell you what your median house size was in your neighborhood, and then they would allow you to build up to 125% of the median house size. So when we represented buyers in unincorporated Boulder County, we would go to the county and have them print out the analysis so we could see what the expansion potential might be for this house that we were considering buying, with a big caveat that may not actually be true, because they could change their mind about a gazillion different things. And now they've decided that no longer can you build more than the median. The most you can build is the median house size. And they're supposedly doing this for climate change and for housing affordability. And that is the key piece of
the
news.
footnote on
exemption. There's an exemption for homes destroyed by the Marshall Fire, but that ends in March 2027. Otherwise, everybody else is subject to this.
It says here too, there's a sliding scale that allows some smaller homes to expand beyond the neighborhood median, but not 125%, I'm assuming.
That's in the new rule?
Yeah, it's right underneath 125% limit. It's just above the Marshall Fire paragraph.
Okay, which homes?
I know. Some,
I mean, this
dude.
is
when they feel like it, man. Come on.
I mean, this is Dennis Miller talking about animals all over again, where we arbitrarily decide that sea otters are really cute because they're adorable and they float on their back and they make cute sounds, but cows are, steak and baseball gloves. Like, I maybe that's not the right analogy because I'm going to piss off all the animal rights people, which I used to be one, and I was a vegetarian for the record.
Imagine you still are an animal rights guy, right? Like,
I still
want to look out for the animals. Yeah,
I'm just not out there protesting with PETA. I definitely am a believer in animal rights.
It's a spectrum, right?
There's
You're just not on the PETA end.
of extremism, and I was not planning to talk about that. Let's talk about house sizes, Hamish.
Yep.
And the reality is this is another one of these ordinances that are largely passed because people have a sentiment against larger homes. And even if you can afford it, they feel some sort of negative experience by you building a large home on your lot. And the first time I saw this type of thing was way back in 2005, when in the city of Boulder, they passed house size limits, and they called it compatible development. They wanted development in neighborhoods that was compatible with the neighborhood, not development that was oversized for the neighborhood. And as a consequence, when they passed that, immediately large homes that could no longer be built became more valuable, and people lost value. Those that had smaller homes on smaller lots, of which a portion of the value of that home is based on its possibility, of its potential, lost value overnight, not even knowing they had lost value. And that's the same thing happening all over again. And they're pretending that it's for carbon emissions, and they're pretending that it addresses affordability, and it doesn't. It's robbing people of value that they had locked in their property. And if they want to build an ADU, or they want to expand the footprint to have multi-generational living, those people
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's like they just expanded density, but then they're now restricting kind of the expansion potential. So great intention. I mean, great stated intentions, but very poor execution. Almost not even their execution. You know?
Yes, construction is very wasteful. Okay. And it does contribute to carbon emissions. No argument. But the relationship between the size of a private residence and carbon emissions is tenuous at best, right? Like, why not have a
arguably would reduce, there's probably a break-even point on a certain size, right? Like, it's probably super inefficient to build a small home and truck in all those building materials versus if you scale it a bit.
I mean,
but I'm not the guy.
If you're gonna build over 6,000 square feet, why not charge a tax per square foot that then gets donated to carbon initiatives? Like, there are all these different ways that they could equalize, right? If you really felt like you needed to charge people for building bigger houses, those people can typically afford it, although they may not want to pay that additional fee. They probably could. And instead, you've just said no, and you've locked out multi-generational living. You've basically robbed people of the value that the land potential had in these properties. And in many cases, some of these homes you wouldn't even be able to see. Like, I put a house under contract in Netherlands. This is like 12 years ago. For me personally, we terminated that deal, but you couldn't see this house from basically anywhere unless you were way out on Barker Reservoir. You might see it, and it was still subject to these house size limits of 125%. And by the way, we terminated on that deal because the owner had done all sorts of unpermitted work that they didn't disclose, and they almost all of that would have had to be permitted in order to expand the house, and that killed it. Totally killed the investment of that home. So we terminated on that deal, and the seller was in complete denial of that reality, but there was no way that we were going to throw down for the potential of the property when it had been so severely limited by unpermitted work. In this case, all these houses are getting limited by this ordinance, and people don't even know what they've lost, right? They just feel morally right that now you can't build these big McMansions anymore. Good. I don't want to see any more McMansions in Boulder, and that's what this is an anti-McMansion ordinance.
I guess, but it's just it's curious. Like, if we had the time and this was our maybe sole job, right? Gather a list of the median sizes and get a sliding scale going and see what the range would be and see how kind of egregious this is or how it isn't. But neighborhoods that have already been massively expanded are going to have the most potential, and the neighborhoods that have barely been touched, right, are going to forever be tiny homes. Yeah,
that's right. Larger homes continue to enjoy the benefit of their largeness. Smaller homes are locked in amber. There's this. I guess why I find this bristling is that there's a moralizing that really is what's driving this, and people don't want to admit it, but that's really what this is about. This is the moral argument against large homes. And if you're going to do that, just call it what it is. Don't pretend it's under climate change initiatives. don't pretend it has anything to do with affordability. It is 100. And what I heard is
especially when we're once again doing nothing for affordable ownership, right?
True, right? Like, how does this have any impact on affordability? And what I heard is that there was actually a lot of protests. Like, this was widely unpopular, and they passed it anyway. So there's this "we know better than you," the citizenry thing going on that I find offensive too. It's almost like we've decided you can't wear green shirts, Hamish, because I hate green shirts, and you can't have a green shirt. I find the color wrong, and I can pass this ordinance that says you can't have green shirts. And I believe in a level of liberty among people. If it's not hurting anybody else, I don't understand why they can't have the liberty to build what they want with the money they've earned or not, they happen to have. It's just... Anyway, all right, so I've gone on to quite a little bit of grandstanding of my own moral stance on this, but that's what you have it. So what is the impact on the market? Instantly, homes that are very large are suddenly worth more. Homes that are small and in neighborhoods with smaller homes cannot build bigger homes. So that's the end of that story for now until somebody votes these county commissioners out.
That's your exciting news segment number 1. Number 2 is actually good news. Or fun
Number
news.
Number 2 is so
news.
much more positive.
Yep.
and this is mostly for the newcomers who are listening to this podcast, or you're thinking about moving here. And one of the most enjoyable things during the summer is to catch a film on the rocks at Red Rocks, the iconic, classic Red Rocks venue, the amphitheater, hosts movies over the summer on slow nights, quiet nights where they have not booked a major recording artist.
Yeah.
You can go catch some live music, watch a movie, have some drinks, eat some food. And it's really a unique experience being there at night, particularly a hot summer night where it's suddenly there's a storm in the distance. You see lightning happening in the distance. And
I love that.
The films are usually cult classics. And the lineup this year is 2001: A Space Odyssey, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. It's not clear if it's the original or it's the Johnny Depp version. Legally Blonde.
Or even Timothy Chalamet's done a Willy Wonka now too.
Oh, there's another one? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's Timothy Chalamet.
He's in stuff. I don't know. Modern new shows and stuff. He's got extremely delicate features. He's on Dune.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sure.
See, we're with it, listeners. Yeah, we're sure.
Well, you're with it. I'm just not that cool.
I don't know. Did you just hear that? I don't know. He's delicate features.
Oh, you could at least tell me who he is. Legally Blonde, and then Shrek 2. So you've got 5 options to go catch a film on the rocks and enjoy Colorado summer. The ticket prices are a little pricey, $25 to get in, but you're not just buying you're not buying the film. You're buying the experience of being at Red Rocks with your family and friends on a night that you'll remember. I've loved every night I've been at Red Rocks and strongly recommend it as an experience.
Red Rocks, I mean, is borderline world famous, so just being able to catch a film there or anything is kind of a treat, a privilege. It's awesome.
I don't know what would make it borderline. It is famous. It is an amazing place with a long list of famous artists that have performed and recorded there.
Yeah. So, wicked cool. I'm thinking about Space Odyssey. I think it'd be kind of fun. I saw you send that in the team chat. So
that's the one I would want to go to, and I think we should do a team outing. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
It'd be fun. Sophie said no already, but it'd be, there's an AI in Space Odyssey. We could compare the AI with our one. Yeah.
That's absolutely right. The opening sequence of that film is so iconic.
Yeah. It's legendary at this rate.
I've
still never seen it. Okay.
All right.
It's Carveouts.
Well, it's time for our Carveouts. Do you want to start, Hamish?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Let me just get down this time code here. So, Osman, it's my Carveout. But this morning you had a HVAC fellow come to your house and kind of scope out the place for mini splits. And I saw that on your calendar, Sunday? And thought, mini splits. And you'd mentioned that there's some pretty good kind of federal and state tax incentives for it. So, really quick, You should have a look at ceiling cassettes. They go in the ceilings. So instead of having kind of a wall unit, you could have it dump in the middle of the room or something. Or output could be cool. You're doing a multiple head setup. Anyhow, I'm looking at it. I'm thinking about DIYing it. There's a brand, Mr. Cool, that makes mini splits, and I ran the numbers, and I think I can get it done for a fairly low price. And it's also my kind of first foray into the permitting system for Westminster City. So as it stands, it's just been like a week-long kind of look at it, see how I can make it work deal. And Westminster's been great. Like, I gave the building planning department a call, and she picked up probably within the first 30 seconds of dialing, answered all my questions, kind of like helped out. She was like, "Are you using an electrical contractor?" And I was like, "Well, I've got my friend." And she's like, "Well, don't put him on, you can sign in as your name. And if you're willing to take the responsibility for his work, your safety and all that, then you don't have to say that he did it. You can say that you did it on the permit for the electrical." And just like really helpful for kind of making sure that I can get my permit filed and get everything working. So there's, I believe, a 30% credit from the federal level up to $2,000. And then Colorado's got, I believe, a flat $1,500 credit. There is rebates and options available through Excel as well in Colorado, but those you can't DIY. They require certified technicians. So no bueno for me, but Osman, you might be looking at that. And yeah,
I am looking at that. And with this home in the mountains, even though we only need cooling maybe 2 weeks of the year, a lot of buyers won't look at a house that doesn't have some sort of cooling system. So having it installed, at some point, we're likely going to sell this house. If my neighbors are listening, it's not this year, but at some point we probably will, for a variety of reasons, one of which is I show so many homes, it's just more convenient to be in town. But man, giving up all the privacy and other things, the spiritual benefits of being up here is really hard for us to stomach. But there's such great incentives right now, it looks like it makes sense to go ahead and install a multi-head unit system. I kind of wonder if you're not busy enough, Hamish, that you think you can do this yourself. We aren't giving you enough work to do is clearly what I'm hearing, because there's no way I have the time to install this myself. And so,
dude, yours is going to be a project. Mine is, I'll show you the videos. They're like 10-minute videos in real time of the install. It's insane.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
We have probably a 5 or 6 head unit system, and the way that I'm going about making a decision is we're getting referrals from our past clients.
Nice.
We have some of, I will share that. I will share this. I believe we have some of the smartest clients out there. Like, they are really well educated. They're often in environmental fields, science fields. We get a lot of professors and doctors and engineers and sometimes lawyers, and they are on it. And so I've got 2 great companies that are currently doing projects or just wrapped up projects, and I'm having both of them come out and give me estimates. And so we'll see. Leah and I need to talk about where these head units would get installed. I do like the idea of the ceiling unit, but I also don't like the idea of the condensate line. And this house is so well insulated, and I kind of am hesitant to punch a big square hole in the ceiling versus a tiny hole. Because it
is a tiny hole too. Yeah,
it's a tiny hole for the wall unit, and it's a big hole in the ceiling. If you're getting rid of a section of drywall and putting this thing in there. So, plus then you've got a condensate line that is running across a flat floor, versus a condensate line that's just dripping out, right? Yeah. So those are also things to think about. But and I have the feeling the wall units are so much more popular. They'll be easier to replace, and they'll be more reliable, but I don't really know that for a fact.
Without a doubt.
I'm just assuming.
Yeah, I think it's still pretty bleeding edge on the ceiling stuff.
I've seen a few houses with it. I thought it was great. It also looked like people that were the kind of people that made decisions a little recklessly in their thought process.
Some of the other updates.
I hate to say it, but when you see houses, you judge people. And you're like, what were you thinking?
It's part of the
this
fun.
Choice.
Yeah.
That's part of the fun. Well, we try not to be judgy, but you can't help but reach opinions about the occupants and the owners based on how they take care of their home and the choices they've made in maintenance and upgrades. expansions, additions, custom home design, particularly when you're like, what were you thinking when you put this weird Prince hot tub out in the master suite and a telescope next to it that's the same color as the hot tub enamel? Anyway, that's a house. If you're looking right now, everyone knows which house I'm talking about, but I'm not gonna mention it because it's already made the rounds of other realtors' socials. They should not be dishing on it because it's active. All right, so anything else to say on that topic?
I'd say I'm complete. It's a bit of a nothing burger, but I'm pretty excited, and I think it should be a fairly easy install. I've got an electrician friend who I'm hoping can help, and otherwise the permitting side of things seems like it's already done. So, yeah.
Nice. Great.
I mean, I got to pay for it, but what are you going to do?
Minor detail.
Yeah, small thing.
All right, so let's do my Carveout. And my Carveout is about realtor cars. And it just is sort of top of mind because obviously I'm a car guy and have been since I was a little kid collecting Matchbox cars as like a toddler. And what I find fascinating is what cars some agents choose to drive and what they're trying to send as a message of their success or lack thereof. And I gotta say that I did trade years ago on the advice of my client. I had a third generation 4Runner that had 200,000 miles on it and had been incredibly
repainted though.
Well maintained, repainted,
yeah,
and manual transmission. It was the classic 4Runner that today has gone up in value dramatically. Loved the vehicle and put all those miles on it, synthetic oil changes, all the rest. But it was starting to feel kind of beat up. And I remember showing pretty high-end homes with my client in the car. And he brought it up and he said, Osman, people are going to judge you for this vehicle. It's not really appropriate for a realtor selling higher-end homes to have this old 4Runner. And then I went into this litany of all the things that are great about it. And he said, that's all true. And it looks like it's 10 years old, younger than it is, but it still sends the wrong message that you don't know what you're doing. And I was like, you're probably right. And this brings us back full circle to Daniel Kahneman, that people have a type 1 and type 2 thought system. And in type 1 land, this fast thinking system, they're intuitively going to conclude you don't know what you're doing because you're driving a 25-year-old Toyota. And so I agreed with him, and I reluctantly traded in. Well, we kept that car for a little while. I reluctantly started on a journey of what I consider as realtor cars. And for a while, I had a BMW 5 Series. I've had
that was the
Audis.
diesel, right?
That was the diesel.
Nice.
Awesome car. I think that one Leah really, really liked, but also felt a little, I don't know, in some ways pretentious and not so useful. Because
cheesy.
Yes, it's nice to put your client into a comfortable ride. And at the time, I was doing that quite frequently. Today, after COVID, we don't put clients in the car as often. More often than not, we're just meeting. Although sometimes they're getting in the car. But for a really busy realtor, you need something that can carry humans and can carry signs and can handle bumpy dirt roads. Right? You need something also, frankly, that doesn't send a signal to your buyers and sellers that you're a that's the wrong word.
Yeah,
I had to blank that out. Hamish,
you want that one?
Maybe you should blank out that word, but there are a certain class of cars that make you look arrogant and that you charge your clients too much money, right? And those, as much as I love Porsches and own one, they are not the realtor car. I don't show up in a Porsche because you look ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
Like it's almost a cliche to show up in a fancy Porsche as a realtor. And so there's no way I would get one. And in fact, Leah would like throw me out of the house for suggesting that as a primary vehicle because she knows intuitively what a bad idea that is to present to your clients. So I did eventually trade in or return, that was a lease, turned in the BMW. And we've had Teslas, and I had an Audi A6 all-road, which I really liked, except for the fact it drove horribly in the mountains. It's just
boring, right? Yeah.
It was just so wallowy in the mountains that it was kind of soulless in its. It was really beautifully built. And
like perfect everything.
Exuded a certain measure of class without pretentiousness, and it carried real estate signs great. It carried humans great. All of those things were true. except it just drove like a big slushy Cadillac from the 80s. It drove so poorly, and I had no idea because I literally had to find that car in Miami and had it shipped here because it was so hard to find that car.
That spec too, right? Like
in 2022.
Cool
that was really, really hard. But I recently discovered the Ineos Grenadier and have traded in the Audi on one of those. We're now a couple thousand miles into it, and it is sort of a billionaire's passion project to come back to the basics. Really basic architecture, supposedly really reliable drivetrain. They backed it up with a crazy warranty, and not a lot of techno gizmos in it that drive you crazy. Like everything works very simply. There's a lot of dials and switches, not a lot of push screen action. There is a screen, but it's sort of minimal, and it's triple locked. So center differential lock, front and rear differential lock.
Yeah.
Tow package, which is pretty
capable.
Reasonable. And I can easily throw real estate signs in it. You could, like a Jeep, you can drain the interior with floor plugs. Like it has all this durable stuff, and I was surprised I bought it because I thought I was just going down there to test drive it, and I was so blown away by its quality, like the way the doors close with a slam, like the thunk. It sounds better than an 80s Mercedes or 90s Mercedes and how its build quality. So that's been the replacement. It doesn't have the arrogant realtor vibe of like a new Porsche or like a Mercedes G-Wagon would have. It's a little more obscure. You kind of have to know what this thing is to even identify it. It looks like an old Land Rover. And so that's been my realtor car. But I would caution those listening, whether you are a real estate agent or you are contemplating hiring a real estate agent, know for sure that realtors pay a lot of attention to their vehicle. And the choice of that vehicle says a lot about who they are. Sort of the way that in most movies, if you see a character driving a Volvo, it represents a sensible, slightly sophisticated, but not that sophisticated vibe. Like this is somebody that might be an academic, but they are maybe a slightly quirky, but typically traditional, conservative, not
boring,
or
but has like some
or
interest,
socially, but kind of a steady everyday person, right? That's a Volvo, and people that cruise around in high-end cars, particularly the exotics like Bentleys, I would be really suspect of as your agent. Like this is somebody who is also wearing a Rolex or equivalent. They want you to see a presentation
it's flashy.
Of extreme success and salesiness. But that doesn't necessarily correlate to high levels of service. And if the vehicle they're driving is not appropriate to carry real estate signs and open house signs and balloons and a fridge, I've got a fridge in mind for clients with cold water. Like that's what I care about. And the ability to get to my house, which is in the mountains, and do it reliably and be safe, and still have some German engineering is kind of cool. And and I'll be honest, on a personal note, I always wanted a Land Rover 110 or a Defender 90 or 110, and the prices were just so extreme for these 50-year-old vehicles. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. And the new Range Rovers are full of techno crap that is going to break, and I'm not interested in going to the dealership every day to fix things. So there you have it. I ended up with a Grenadier.
Yeah, we have very little time. My input will be I'm part of a few Facebook groups for kind of older classic BMWs, and the Grenadier made it on there. And I was expecting kind of a roast on the comments section, but after opening it up, a lot of general support, and they really like the powertrain. It's a B58, the same engine as in the Toyota Supra, the latest. I can't remember if it's tuned or if it's the second gen or anything, but a kind of funny is the gear shifter in your Grenadier is the same gear shifter in a lot of just BMW sedans, and it's like the one thing that they should have changed. But in a lot of engine swaps and everything, where they'll take a BMW power plant and put it in an older car, the gear shifter has to stay. It's coded into the wiring or however BMW did their thing, so it makes sense. But it looks a little out of place with the super utilitarian panel and everything, and then you have this like spaceship gear shifter.
Yeah. A lot of people are swapping out the super gear shifter because it works.
They are.
And it looks more appropriate. It's a little squarer, but I'm not going to, that's just pure cosmetics.
That's too much. Yeah.
I don't care that much. All right. Well, this is the end of the House Einstein podcast. We are wrapping up rapid fire because we have to jump into a meeting to review an offer with one of our clients. And if you've joined us this far and you've listened to all of this, I want to personally thank you for giving us your attention and your time and your feedback and your comments. And of course, when you reach out to us and want us to represent you, we deeply, deeply appreciate your trust in us, and we don't take that lightly. If you like this content, be sure to check out our other social media. You can find it on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook or X or Blue Sky. You can also learn a lot about how we operate and engage with us at houseeinstein.com. Thank you so much for joining us. Hamish, you have anything else to add?
That's it. Thanks so much.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. We'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Okay.